So this morning, I finished the first section of this book, Design Your Good Life, where the first phase is called Spark, and Spark includes the mindset of curiosity, the skill set of ideation, the drive of clarity that leads to the outcome of purpose. So I did some of the exercises that Charles Lee, the author of this book, has recommended. And again, on the previous books that I've read, people define purpose in different ways. For me, the way that I like to define purpose is it's a map and a journey. And so the meaning of your life, written by Arthur Brooks, is the one that kind of introduced me of seeing purpose as a map. And then what Charles Lee has done is also invited you to see it as a journey. So it's not a destination, but it's a direction, which I totally agree with. And so, he walks you through kind of the spark, right? So kind of the catalytic event that makes you to kind of want something more or something different. That leads to ideation, where he walks you through the design thinking process to help you to start looking at kind of what what it could become, and then kind of giving you the motivation or the drive that is built and fueled by a desire for clarity, which I love. I mean, as many of you who've been following along, clarity and courage is my thing, right? And then what that does is that leads to the outcome of purpose. And so for me, I was able to kind of rewrite out my purpose statement. And so I'm going to share that with you. All right. So for me, purpose, is still in my mind, it's a map and it's also a journey. And so purpose kind of lays out the map, and then me living out my purpose is a journey, right? And I think one of the things that I do want to kind of add to this conversation is that there is a life's purpose, right? The why behind why you do what you do, but also the contribution that you feel you're created to make. And so another way of asking, another way to answer that question is, why do you matter to others, right? And so identity is where you're going to find your worth and your meaning, I believe. But in terms of kind of the mattering is really around the contribution that you're going to make that not only impacts your life, but impacts the lives of your family, your community, and to others. And so for me, just want to separate those two things, because I have a clear picture of what is it that I want with my life, right? And I just use a kind of a short phrase called the unforced rhythm of grace that you learn when you walk and work alongside Jesus. And so, as many of you know, I'm a Jesus follower. But the purpose of my work, or why I matter to others, and the contribution that I bring, and whether the role that I play or the value that I bring, I was able to kind of define that as my purpose statement. So I hope that made sense, right? And so for me, I'm going to share you that. So for me, my purpose statement, why I matter to others, what is the contribution I seek to make, is to guide and to empower people to create and lead change. And the change that I hope that they seek to make is what I call the beautiful future. And so let me just kind of break it down, right? To guide, for me, I serve as a guide, and the way I do that is I create frameworks. I create kind of different lenses for people to see their current reality and also to envision their desired future. And so through frameworks and questions and, in a sense, design thinking process, I'm able to help them to kind of have clarity on what is real and what is today, and also be able to have clarity on where they're headed. So we call that from here to there, right? So if you know where you are, you know where you're going, that's pretty much the biggest step. And most people know that that's probably what I'm good at, of listening and being a sounding board and kind of saying back what I heard you say, in hopes that we could get to a place of clarity that could be articulated, so then you could kind of carry with you as a reminder of, this is what I'm here to do, this is the contribution I want to make, this is who I want to become, and so forth. So to guide, so that's a big role that I play. I'm a guide. Also, I wrote to guide and to encourage. And for me, it's one thing to have clarity, but most of the time you also need courage to take those steps, because um, the clarity is not hard to be found, right? It just takes a few questions and you really just create space to think and to journal, and you could find that clarity pretty easily. But the reason why we don't live out from that clarity is because it's scary. Um, it's the fear of what people will think. It's the imposter syndrome. It's a fear of what we call sunk costs, like all the time you invested to build a life today. A clarity of a pivot or course correction means all that investment may be lost, right? So there's a lot of reasons. And so another thing, maybe this is because I was a pastor for so many years, is that to be able to encourage people, to give people courage to move and take action on what is clear. And then also to guide and encourage leaders. And so leaders is kind of my bullseye of the target audience. And the way that I define leaders are those who create change. For me, I have a number called 2.3. And so for me, my goal is not to help every single person in the world, because I can't. But one of the places that I'm really good at helping is helping what we call the innovators or the pioneers or the frontiers, or some people call themselves visionaries. I don't like calling them visionaries because I have a very different definition of vision. But those people that are super curious, want to create systemic change, not just symptomatic change, in service of the world. And then another word on that purpose statement is to create. And so create is really, for me, to create something new or better. And so if we're not creating things to be better, or creating new approaches, new ways, new models, then we're just managing the status quo. And then, so to create and lead change. So change is all about leadership, right? If you're a leader, you create change. And if you create change, you're a leader. And so for me, that's how I define leadership. And so it's really important. And then the beautiful future is how I kind of categorize the type of change that I hope people create. And the reason why it's called the beautiful future is because I don't want to just create a better future. I want to create a future that is also wrapped in mystery and beauty and aesthetics. My kind of, again, from my faith background, beauty equates to what we call imago Dei, made in God's image. And I think one of the things that I think how we could create a beautiful future is help people to choose to see beauty in oneself, right? So when you see yourself, do you see beauty or do you see ugliness? When you look at others, right? So you choose to see beauties on others and humanity. Yes, there's some really bad players, which the news tend to amplify. But if you look all around you, there's pretty good people around you. And they're beautiful. And then lastly, a beautiful world, right? And so when you look at creation, you look at how kind of all the beautiful things of this world are so like perfectly like interplay one another. You could actually really enjoy that. Another way you could say beautiful future for me is human flourishing. That's kind of the framing and the language that not Harvard Business, I think Harvard University has a project called the Human Flourishing Project, but also in a lot of the different contexts you see that word come out. And so for me, the purpose statement of my life is to guide and to encourage people to create and lead change. And the change that I hope they will create is a change that leads to a beautiful future. So that's kind of how I'm processing it. I've been working on kind of clarifying, what is it that I do for decades now. And so, but this is something that I've been able to live out pretty regularly, and this has become part of my calendar. I also track, when do I explore, when do I create, and when do I guide. That comes from this phrasing. And so, so we finished phase one of this. I'm just sharing with you what I'm doing with what I'm learning. Next phase is called Actualize, and I'm looking forward to how to take this kind of ideas and actually make it into reality. And so for those who are new to this channel, my name is Sam. Pretty regularly, almost every morning, I wake up, I read, and I turn on the camera and I process out loud or share with you what I'm thinking or what I've been processing, in hopes that it would encourage you, that you'll find some clarity and you'll find some courage to create that beautiful future by learning to live and lead the beautiful life, and hopefully with the beautiful one today. All right, see you next time.